Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Pick Up the Mic Harvest Podcast, and with me, Mike Reiner, lead pastor of Harvest Church, with the executive pastor, Will Land. What are you? And Sunshine is on the board again, and she's laughing at us, and she won't tell me why. Why are you laughing? Because I almost burped when I was talking.
No.
I thought it's because you forgot my name.
You kind of just stumbled over that whole intro.
Yeah, I blew the intro.
Yeah.
I blew the intro, but here I am. People who heard this for the first time, though, will think that was perfect. What's on your shirt there?
So two brothers I went to high school with started a gym at the Pittsburgh Mills Mall called the Legends of Pittsburgh Fitness Center. It was their second gym. It's very big. It's an awesome gym. I wish I drove.
How many years has it been there? I think my son used to go to it back when he lived here.
Yeah, probably 2010 maybe.
Yeah, he worked at Starbucks. He loved that gym. They have a soccer field in it.
So the Pittsburgh Mills Mall was a failed experiment from the get-go, and it's dead. It's bankrupt now. They declared bankruptcy, the developers. But they started a small gym in Lower Burrell, and then they bought the entire, I forget which department store it was, like a J.C. Penney size space. Took out.
Yeah, I know which one. I know where it is.
Took out all the ceilings, took out all the false walls, and they just have this huge space for very little money. And it's like the only thing still alive at the mall is this gym. They got an indoor basketball court, indoor soccer field, an indoor turf field where you can flip tires and stuff. They got CrossFit stuff, regular weightlifting stuff.
So you know these guys?
Gym. Yeah, he was a pro soccer player for the Riverhounds, the younger brother, and Nick and Stefan Lundberg. Good guys, Christian guys, very good Christian guys.
Lundberg.
And man,
they sound like Vikings.
Dude, they can move some weight.
Awesome.
Like Stefan was a pro soccer player. He's short, pretty light, like 165, 170. He can rep out pull-ups with his wife on his back.
Does he often have to do that?
No, that was when he was getting his gym going. You're trying to do marketing stuff.
She won't let go.
And you're trying to be a personal trainer.
I'm doing the pull-ups. You're not doing them. I'm doing them. That was Lundberg. Listen, hey, this is not a sponsored commercial for Legends
of Pittsburgh
Fitness.
But I like them. And it's
so we're
cheap.
saying to you, go join the gym. We're fans now. My son was a member years ago when he worked at Starbucks.
Owners are brothers in Christ, for sure.
But the reason we have to say it's not an endorsement, in case some people hate them because they don't want us to be associated with them, they're not paying us.
No.
So we wanted to be clear. We're not getting paid. It's just a T-shirt, but it sounds like a great place to go play soccer indoors or lift weights or whatever it is you like doing at a gym. Hey, today we got to talk. I want to talk about the what's happening in the world, as we should regularly. We have to. Things are changing so fast, and I want us to think about government trends and what's happening, because it's changing right in front of our face, and it's not going to stop. We're in the middle of something that I don't think will be figured out until after it's all over. Kind of like people discovering the New World and sending over people to steal the gold, and then the Puritans coming to the New World and all that stuff. Big things happening in the world as we speak, and this will be old news because I think we're about 2 weeks out in our recording. The tensions between India and Pakistan are picking up. Now, India, I just want us to think about what does it mean to have a nation? What does it mean to have a government? I want to suggest a few thought questions to throw on the table. One, is it good to have great big nations? Because they present all kinds of management difficulties. Or is it better to have small nations? It doesn't matter because we have great big nations now. But remember, they used to be small, and now they're all great big. Another thought is what makes some nations different from other ones? And the other one is, what is changing in our high-tech, high-communication age in these nations, and why? And just to pull some puzzle pieces together, I'd say some of the biggest forces on the earth right now are Islam, communism or Marxism, what's called globalism, what's called nationalism. and what's called secularism, and what's called colonialism, and Christianity. All these things are forces on the earth. You were saying to me just earlier, tell me what you like about Modi, who is the Prime Minister of India, which is now probably the most populous nation in the world. It's hard to be sure, but probably the most populous nation in the world.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about. I don't want to claim to be an expert on a lot of his policies, but what I pick up from popular culture and the news and whatnot is he's a conservative, and by that I mean he's a nationalist figure. He's similar to Trump and others in that vein. What the guy from
or Gandhi,
Romania. He wants to do what's best for his people. He represents India and nobody else.
Well, the lady in so wait, you're saying a nationalist figure. Let's name a few people. You mentioned Trump. You got that the Italian. What's that woman's name? Woman in Italy.
I can't remember. I was thinking of the
premier or leader of Italy. What is her name? I'm going to find it real quick here. Oh, Giorgio Meloni. Have you listened to much of Moroni?
Nope.
Oh my gosh. Well, if you love Modi. So Modi, he's a Hindu nationalist. India is obviously it's a long history. I just want to think of modern history. The last couple hundred years, it was the English who came and really helped form them into a great big nation. The people were already there, but they didn't have as much unity as they have now. And what we call the colonizers, the British came in and set up schools and taught them to read, and obviously all in English. And their own Hindu or Hindi language and their Hindi identity was under the pressure of the English colonialists, obviously. But at the same time, a lot of Muslims had come into India too. And in 1947, and before 47, Gandhi came along and through his peaceful means and whatever, eventually the times had changed. The British said it's time for us to leave India and let them go, and they peacefully ran away, sort of. And so India was there. And in 1947, after World War II, like so many places changed, Pakistan was divided from India, and that's where all the Muslims were supposed to go.
Yeah.
But so now that leaves India, and they've had several leaders. Indira Gandhi, which was Gandhi's daughter, right? Or
I don't know. I'm ignorant to all that.
It doesn't matter. I don't know super well either. But currently, and they're a democracy, and they're supposed to be a secular democracy, meaning no religion is preferred. Well, Modi came along as a Trump-like figure of the biggest nation on the earth and said, no, we're Hindus. Yeah. We have a Hindi background.
So, and before we get into that, so you're saying this is happening in more places than just there. The one I was trying to think of that the internet just helped me is Viktor Orban in Hungary.
Yes.
And he said, we're Christian. I mean, he's not using the same definition,
Christian.
But they're applying.
So Modi, I'm sticking with you here. I'm just going to make sure we're getting our same idea out fast. Modi said we're Hindu, and we're going to speak Hindi, and we're going to promote Hinduism. Now they're the second biggest Muslim nation in the world too. I mean, Indonesia's number one, but there are a lot of Muslims living in India, but they're a minority, even though there's millions of them, and they're more and more oppressed by Modi. But so are the Christians. Christians are only 1%, 2% maybe. They too are oppressed by Modi. Not because he necessarily is trying to make a religious statement. He's saying, we're Hindi. So there's no separation of religion and identity. So then you got Viktor Orban.
Viktor Orban in Hungary is another one of these types of figures. Nationalistic, not afraid to associate with a particular faith group in law.
And then you have Giorgia Meloni of Italy, and she's been standing up for the last several years and making statements like, we're Christian, We have families. We're women. We make babies. She's trying to return Italy to a nationalistic situation where we're proud to be Italians. Why all that force in Europe? One of the reasons why is something. We're not done with the nationalism piece. We're putting Modi, Orban, and Meloni and
even
Trump.
And even that woman in France, what's her name?
We'll get to her, Le Pen.
Le Pen.
But in Trump, for now, we'll come back to that. But there's another force going on, and that is what could be called European globalism, where there are a lot of people in Europe who think we can bring the whole world into a better place if we control the whole world. It's kind of European arrogance, and the European Union, which united all the nations of Western Europe years ago, not that many, under one umbrella. Their headquarters in a place called Brussels, and it's like having someone outside your country give rules that your country has to live by. One of them has to do with immigration.
Yeah, and you have to give up some sovereignty. If you're going to join the European Union, then that means the European Union is going to be able to do some things, set some rules that you as a country
have to live by.
So,
and they have to do with normally climate change and immigration. And you might say, wait, as Americans,
and financial stuff.
Yeah, and financial stuff. We've been attacked by these things. I know this is a globalist agenda. It's not a conspiracy. It's a real thing. And the way into the EU is money and power. If we are united, we can compete with the United States. We have all these European states, and they have an immigration problem that they've created on purpose. They've just opened the doors of all the European countries to immigrants. Well, guess who sends immigrants if you do that in Europe? Mostly Muslims. Muslims will send their people over to you from North Africa or from other places, Pakistan, Afghanistan, wherever. And they'll send their poor and their huddled masses. They'll send their worst too. They will invade your country with Islam because you're going to let them do that. And this has caused nothing but tension throughout Europe. And that's why Viktor Orban says, no, we're a Christian country. You're not going to do that to us. We're not letting any of you people in here. Poland is standing up and saying the same. Right now, Ireland is late to the game here. But Conor McGregor, the UFC fighter, is saying, no, Ireland needs to be Irish. And you have England. In England, they're having a very similar, Nigel Farage is their guy's name. He has yet to take over, but the two main parties, the Tories and the Liberals, they're not an answer. So they're creating a third party that they're planning to take over with. The issue for most of those Europeans is Islam. They're not going to say it, but it's Islam. Islam is infiltrating France. It's infiltrated
Germany.
Yeah, and Sweden. And these places, the people from Islam are coming. They're having babies. They're taking over the country, not from the top down, but from the bottom up. Because Islam does that. The reason they're allowed in is because the globalist leaders in Brussels want them there. Why they want them there, I don't even know. It's very similar to what we saw Biden do, where he just opened the doors and we were flooded with immigrants. It's almost a way of tearing down Western society and Christian nations, if you will. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, well, I got a couple things going on in my head. So one, if you think they're doing it by accident, then your question goes to, well, I guess what we're all learning is that we got the wrong definition of what a nation is. Like, a nation's not just a border or not just a set of ideas, which everybody thinks of in America, but like it's actually a people group united by certain things. And so you can't just pour in a bunch of different peoples into that people group who don't share all the things that make the one place a nation and expect it to remain the same nation, is one idea I had. And the other idea I had when you said, they seem to be doing it on purpose, and I don't know why. The most cynical, or maybe I would say pessimistic view of why would be the idea of globalism is kind of predicated on this idea of like aristocracy. A small number of smart people know what's best, and they want to accumulate the power because they think they can do better than if we distribute power to everyone else. Well, and people aren't generally quick to give a small group of people a lot of power unless there's disruption. It's when there's chaos.
You're saying that the reason why they're creating chaos is so they can have more power.
At almost all times in history previously where one person or a small group accumulated mass power themselves, it
through chaos.
It preceded, like, chaos happened before, which then allows people to say, we need somebody to fix all this chaos. Just
so the reason
fix it
for
us.
We're thinking through the globalists or there's a Marxist strain that's, you don't have to be in a Marxist country to hear. It's this idea that all the world is divided into the oppressed and the oppressor. And it gives a lot of status to any victim. In the United States, we've seen that. We called it woke culture. Affirmative action, cries of racism everywhere, sexism everywhere, transphobia everywhere. These are really Marxist ideas that if you can show yourself to be a victim, you should be able to usurp the powerful. What Will is saying is there's a purposeful chaos created by this, which gives a more socialist-minded people ability to take control of things. Things like climate control are used as a tool for this also. The climate ideology currently, as we sit here, Spain, did you know Spain and Portugal lost all their power this past, it's in the news. It's funny, American news, you've got to look for world news because all American news wants to talk about is Trump and some guy in Ecuador. But yeah, they lost all their power. And you know why they lost all their power? First, they thought maybe it was a hit from a cyber attack. No.
They made dumb decisions about their power grid in the cause of greenifying.
In fact, Spain just announced that they're 100% green now. Well, the wind stopped blowing enough. And no kidding. And the sun didn't shine enough, and their whole grid went down because they're green. And this, what they call this net zero project of Germany, the Germans have shut down almost all their power from gas, oil, and so you know where the Germans get most of their power or their fuel for power?
Russia.
From Russia. So they pay Russia for the fuel, and then they fight Russia in the Ukraine because of the green movement. So there's a lot of stupidity there. So let's go backwards, though, to the big picture. You got nationalism. You got a lot of nations fighting against this. What's that one in South America, the guy with the chainsaw? You know who I mean, right?
I do.
Argentina. What's the leader?
Because we talked about him.
Leader
not
of
on the
Argentina.
podcast, but you and I did. I'm trying to
These
remember.
people, if they didn't all have funny names, we'd remember them.
Yeah, it was like Bob and Steve.
Like good American names. Why they don't have them, I don't know. It's Javier Milei.
Yes,
and he's went down, or he was elected in Argentina and pretty much said enough of this crap, and he's turned them all around. Made their bureaucracy small, really done a lot of the same things Trump and Doge have been trying to do, and he did it before them. The guy in Ecuador, Bukele, who a lot of us have heard of, he's actually a Christian, and he got rid of all the gangs by building these prisons, and he took his little country from the highest murder rate in the world to the lowest, just like that. But he's nationalist. He's pro-Ecuador. So you have people pushing back. They're pushing against Marxism and socialism because that's the other option, and they're pushing against globalism and the government takeover. So you have this huge force, but the communists, they're in trouble too. The communists are China, and China is really in bigger trouble than they want to let on. How they're going to handle that, we don't know. China is the number 2 economy in the world. They think they're number 1. Maybe in some measures they are, but they're weak economically because they depend completely on the United States import or exports, that they export to the United States as well as the rest of the world, but we're their number one buyer, and they're not an importer. So all that means is if people stop buying their goods, they run out of money, and they are running out of money, and they're running out of people. Their population is, I think they lost 1 million people last year, and not 1 million out of 1 billion, but their population went down. That's the point. They have 1 billion people and they can't make more. They're making less, and so they're in big trouble. But they're communists, straight out communists. They're going to fall. Something's going to happen, or they're going to have to take over more stuff. They're going to fall. So you look at China, that's 1 billion plus people. And then you look at India, that's 1 billion plus. And India right now is rattling swords with Pakistan, who's a Muslim nation. And Pakistan and India both have nukes. Pray no one uses them. India's on the rise, if you will. If you were to look at Africa's continent, the whole southern half has turned very Christian, but that doesn't mean they're peaceful. The northern half is Islamic. And if you were to look at Islam's effect on the world right now, wherever they go, there's trouble. Wherever Muslims go, there's trouble. Now, the way the globalists and the Western socialistic mind, the American mind goes is to say that is called Islamophobia. They're victims, and therefore they need to be protected. But they don't need to be protected. Wherever they go, they want to set up their Sharia law. And make no mistake, Islam is a wicked ideology and has been since 600 AD. And they oppress women. Their Sharia law is bad. They take over nations. I can't tell if they're on the edge of taking over Europe or being destroyed themselves. Because for the first time ever, everyone is starting to see in Western society what the governments won't admit, and that is that Islam is evil. And they're starting to say it out loud. Islam is an evil force. And so you have Islam in Europe, where they're not in charge. You have Islam in places where they are in charge. And that's a force in the world. So if you were to take, let's say, India and the Hindu nationalism, and then China over here, and just think big moving forces. China has 100 million Christians in it that are pushing against their wickedness. And then South Africa, southern half of Africa, all those countries, think of their Christian and still trying to sort out their government. The northern half, you can see, are they're a mess. Those countries like Libya and Yemen, they're a mess. The Muslims are messing everything up, whatever Muslims touch. Then you have Iran, which is about to be hammered by Israel, I think. Israel really wants to hammer them and take away their nukes. Did you know Iran was not a Muslim nation? It was a
Persian,
like Zoroastrianism or something weird like that. Libya was not a Muslim nation. All these nations weren't. Wherever the Muslims go, they take over. And so I can't tell if the Muslims are on the edge of being crushed or taking over.
I almost see it as in the middle of just the next cycle in the saga of, the last Ottoman Empire. I mean, you had like 2 or 3 cycles in the Middle Ages of the Muslims pushing all the way out up into Europe and Northern Africa, and then getting pushed back and then being pushed back. I mean, that's why you have all this Ottoman Empire architecture in Spain. Everybody loves all the architecture in Spain. It's mostly Muslim architecture.
Well, so you're saying they went forward and backwards on cycles.
So they've pushed out via immigration now, so different means, but a lot of the same outcome. And now everybody's like waking up to the fact that this is ruining our nations, and I think they might just get...
Is everyone figuring it out, or the people are? Here's the difference. The government of England is starting to be run by Muslims.
Right.
Okay, the governments are not. These nationalistic movements in
Some
Europe,
of them are figuring it out. I'm hoping it continues.
Without question, this is... Say what... No one's saying it. I'm going to present this idea, and I'd say to anyone, prove me wrong. These marches in Ireland and in Italy and in or not in Italy, in England, and the people rising up in Sweden, and this is all about Islam. They're saying these people are changing our culture. They're starting to outnumber us. We have an identity, and their own people are trying to get rid of their identity. Weird stuff is going on. But any place that's run by Muslims is a mess. Pakistan and Indonesia are probably the two most stable out of all the Muslim. You have the UAE, but the UAE isn't really Muslim. They're Muslim in name only. They're really American secularists.
They're like run by money.
They're run by money, and they don't care who is God.
Yeah.
They don't care. So then you have the United States of America, which is right now what it is. How about Canada? You got Canada is self-destructing. It's killing itself with its. Well, they're literally killing themselves. They're one of the number one countries where people can go and have the right to die and kill themselves. In all the world, you have nothing right now but turmoil. Even in America, we're not at war, but there's turmoil. People aren't seeing it. It's these huge movements of thought. I want to throw out a couple of ideas and then get to my main point in all this. Question. We understand what makes a communist nation communist. We understand what makes a Islamic nation Islamic, a Hindu nation Hindu, right? And all have to do with how they define God.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that makes the difference in Western nations to make them all better places to live? If you don't count the UAE, the best places to live in the world are the United States, Switzerland, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, well, it used to be, parts of South America. Why are they the best place?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I would say the sanctity and sovereignty that comes along with recognizing the image-bearing qualities of the individual. So it has to do with religion. So one true God, and humans are image bearers of that God, and therefore, if you recognize that, then they have personal sovereignty and personal sanctity that you have to hold up above the collective good. Anytime you hear someone start to call for the collective good over the individual's good, you can do that only if the individual decides he wants to do that. As soon as you force collective good upon the individuals, is when I think societies go wrong. And so I think most of the West is predicated on like the sovereignty and sanctity of the individual as an image bearer of God is what I would say.
So what you're saying, without using the word, is it's because they're Christian based.
Yeah. Yep.
In their origin.
Correct.
And that has been undercut. That has been belittled. The Christian base of most Christian, quote, nations is undercut, which is the vacuum that lets the globalists in. It's the vacuum that lets Marxism in. Christianity killed all the gods. And one thing Modi is right about, if he doesn't stop Christians, they'll kill Hinduism. Because Jesus kills all gods, because he is the only God. And so wherever they go, they kill all the gods. But if you're going in a Christian nation and you say, well, I don't want Christ, there's nothing left but secularism. And that creates a vacuum. There's a reason why what we consider common sense in the West is what it is. We're generally moral and good people, not from a spiritual sense, we're all sinners, but we're generally more moral in our thinking, or we used to be, and still are largely. The idea that victims need to be treated better than others is a Christian idea. It's just being twisted.
Yeah, it's
right.
the upside down kingdom.
Right, because we believe from Christ that the children need to be protected, those who are physically disabled need to be respected, the blind are valuable, the elderly who are poor are valuable. That's a Christian idea. All the Marxists are doing is they're shoving people into that category. Like, well, here's a black transvestite, lesbian, whatever they are, and obviously a minority person, so you have to treat her well, him well, it well. So the morality of that we live by, in other words, say it this way, what America is dealing with now is we're on the edge of becoming savages. We don't even know it. Absolute savages.
Why do you say that? So how do you connect everything we've been talking about to?
Well, this isn't my main point, but let me just say that. When I didn't say we're on the verge, I say we're on the edge. You could go either way when you're on an edge.
What's a verge?
Okay, we're on the verge.
I don't know.
Well, let's just say we're walking a razor's edge. If you're going to say that Christianity is not your guiding influence, and that's when we call culture clash, that's the clash. Trans stuff, gay marriage, this is all about, is Jesus' word true? That's all that's about.
Yep.
Abortion, the killing of human babies. The idea that if I make a baby, that's a very important thing and I should be very responsible and it should be costly, is a Christian idea. The casting out of children in the Roman Empire was not unknown before the Christians came, and they kept rescuing all the babies. The idea, no, if I should have sex just for entertainment, and it has nothing to do with responsibility or seriousness. So if I make a baby, I should be able to dispose of it. That's a savage and brutal alternative. If anyone thinks you couldn't convince the modern non-Christian mindset to kill whole sections of people, you're mistaken. When you see these savage kind of outbreaks in our streets that we saw with the Black Lives Matter, with the Antifa, which were held up by the institutions of society. They were held up by government, they were held up by our universities, and they were held up by our media as okay. They were burning
positive goods,
burning down our cities, and yes, and killing people in the name of, we're mad about George Floyd, so we're going to kill people and burn down things. And everyone said, these are good things. These are good things. You can even go outside during COVID and do this because it's a good thing to do. That's savage. The idea that people can come and break into stores and just steal. For us, that's looking like, well, that's not too dangerous. It's like watching a child play with baby cobras and going, well, it's not that bad. We look at that stuff and don't realize we're on the verge of a very, in other words, all you have to do is define someone as the enemy, and you can kill them. We're not that far from that, or we are. It depends on who wins this tug of war. The difficulty with nationalism, if it's not Christian based, is who knows what you end up saying you love. I'm thankful that Trump promotes Christianity. Now, I don't think he knows Christ, but if he does, he's not discerning at all, because the Christians he promotes are silly people like Paula White, just absolute idiots. But at least he speaks the right words. But that doesn't mean the country's going with him. The country may not adopt those things. And so what I'm trying to paint a picture of is a lot of moving forces right now that are very similar all over the world. In other words, used to be the world wasn't that connected, and you could have a little communism over here, a little paganism over there, and everyone, we're all connected now. You know, I don't know if you know it, but Korea is about to elect a communist for their leader, South Korea, a Marxist.
What?
Yeah, he's been nominated.
What?
He'll probably win. And they're very free, American-like, one-third Christian nation. Who knows what's going to happen with that?
They didn't learn They didn't learn their lesson.
Yeah.
They're still divided in two over that last dabbling with that.
Well, in fact, that's not exactly how it worked. Well, how it worked was the Japanese were pounding the crap out of them, and their liberators were half American and half Russian, and so that made a communist side, and it doesn't matter now. There is no disconnect anymore between Western Europe and Eastern Europe. There is no disconnect anymore between. There's no way that everything we do doesn't affect everyone around. So, I guess the whole point I want to get at here is, as Christians, we need to think in the biggest possible terms. We don't have to understand what's happening. But I think we're going to be stupid if you don't realize that everything could change on a dime everywhere at any point. And we haven't even talked about the tools that these people can use. When I brought up big nations have, if a nation is 100,000 people, 200,000 people, 1 million people, and you think those are tiny. Those used to be what nations were. Now we have nations of
It used to be the city of Pittsburgh. It was like a world.
Yeah, that would have been a huge population. And now it's just a city. And so we have 300 million here, a billion there. Small nations have 40 million people in them now. So many are smaller. There's an efficiency to that. It's easier to rule that many people with fewer resources because you can end redundancies. But it also means fewer people determine the fate of more people. And they protect themselves from losing power. People in power use power to maintain power. So you have these huge nations, and we're really, even in America, we still are at the mercy of our leaders. We can control that to a certain extent, but even in our free country, we have to fight even to have that control. What I'm getting at is this whole world is moving. And I think you are going through a time, if you're alive now, unlike any other time ever in its drama. Not counting when Eve ate the apple, that was probably a pretty dramatic shift. Or when Noah had the ark, that was dramatic. More dramatic than the Roman Empire. All the world is shifting and moving very quickly in fundamental ways. Ways that could change each nation I mentioned very quickly. What the heck's going to happen to Canada? I don't know. They're becoming more socialist, more stupid, more globalist. Maybe we should go take them over. I don't know. Things are shifting, and the ideas are not congruent. The nationalist in Italy is not going to get along with the leaders in Belgium, and the nationalist in Hungary is not going to get along with the people of Ukraine or other areas. We're all in a big fight. So with all this in mind, I want to bring us back to Psalm 2 and just give a simple strategy for us as believers. Psalm 2.
Why do the nations rage?
Yes. Why are the nations in an uproar and the peoples devising a vain thing? The kings of the earth take their stand and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and his anointed. Who's his anointed? That's his king, the one he's chosen. And he's saying the rulers of the world counsel together against the Lord and his king. So God the Father, God the Son, saying, let us tear their chains apart and cast their cords from us. He who sits in heaven laughs, the Lord scoffs at them. So whatever Modi is trying to do, God is laughing at. Whatever the Muslims are trying to do, God is laughing at. Whatever they're trying to do in Brussels, God is laughing at from the EU. He laughs at Putin. He laughs at Xi. They're trying to do it without him. They're not going to pull it off. The Lord scoffs at them. So the time is coming when he will speak to them in his anger. And he will terrify them in his fury. And he'll say this, but as for me, I've installed my king. God's ultimate answer to the mess I just described is, oh, but I have a king. And I'm going to install him. He's going to show up upon Zion, my holy mountain. That's the Temple Mount. And I will surely tell of the decree of the Lord. He said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will give you the nations as your inheritance. So we have this drama playing out where all the nations of the world, like we were talking about, are conspiring together, figuring out how they're going to get what they want. And someone says, well, God doesn't like that. They'll throw him off. We don't need him. The Christian God says this. Modi says, I don't believe in him. He's gone. They throw him off. And God says, oh, ho, ho. I've got a king. I'm going to put him on my mountain. And I want you to hear me talk to him. Son, see all these nations? Yes. How about I give them all to you? That's what he's saying. Ask of me, and I will surely give the nations as your inheritance. He's not telling Jesus to ask him. He's saying, here they are, and the very ends of the earth your possession. Now, when Jesus gets the nations, what does he do? You shall break them with a rod of iron and shatter them like earthenware. And that is the picture of a heavy scepter made of iron falling down on one of those, ba-boom, and just crushing it. And now, therefore, so then here's the advice to kings before that happens. Show discernment. Take warning, O judges of the earth. Worship the Lord with reverence and rejoice with trembling. Do homage to the Son. Honor Jesus now so that he doesn't become angry and kill you. That's what he's saying, and you perish. For his wrath is soon kindled, and how blessed are those who get saved by him, really take refuge in him. So what I'm getting at is you do live in remarkable times, and you should literally get up and instead of getting angry when you read the news, you should be in wonder and awe and say to yourself, what is God doing? Because God is at work. He's moving all these pieces. He's allowing for the sinfulness of man and what the demons are up to so that he can get maximum people saved. And you are part of that drama, and you don't have to worry about controlling it all. Just judge like a Christian. Do not put all your hopes in MAGA. You may say, well, isn't it a good thing that America is Christianized and is better? Yeah, it's good if we do good moral things, but it's a temporary Band-Aid, and you don't know where it's going to go. Your faith is in Christ. But here's the beautiful thing. The most flexible, adaptable organism in all the world is not the amoeba, it's the Church of Jesus Christ. It can go anywhere. Our history has shown that it can thrive in freedom and it can thrive in oppression. And it does not need buildings made with hands. It doesn't need statues, temples, incense, or robes. It can go to North Korea, and it can go to Canada, and it can go to Africa, and it can go to China. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What we need to do is consistently follow the King ourselves. And the world will be what the world is. The nations will become what they become. Do not be shocked is if you see more amazing things than anyone's ever seen. You already have if you've lived the last 30 or 40 years, but even more amazing things or terrible things. Terrible weapons being used on human beings. Do not be shocked by anything you see. Just know that your God is in control and everything is going according to plan. But I do think there's got to be an anticipation and even excitement to know that you get to live at a wonderful time. It's not a time for fear. Yeah, it's dangerous. It's risky out there. But you're in the center of God's will. And as long as you're in the center of God's will, you're invincible until it's time for you to go home. So this is a great time to be alive. Don't let the newscasters interpret it as anything else, and don't let yourself be entertained to death. I was watching a little interview of when the power went out in Spain, and they had this tennis match, and they were talking to a tennis pro, and she's sitting there talking. She was talking about the most insipid things in the world that she was going to be doing. Some game she was going to be playing online or something stupid like that. Boom, the power goes out. And then the interviewer no one can hear anything. And I think that's a perfect picture of what's going to happen to many people. They're playing and thinking this is all, I'm just going to play Minecraft or do whatever I do. And then boom, you live in very serious times. But not at all discouraging times. As a Christian, we have the gospel of Jesus Christ. We have the word of God. It is unchanged. And we have the church of Jesus Christ. And it's perfectly made for any of the nations I mentioned. The mission may look different, but it's perfect for every single country, including ours, whether it's legal or illegal. And God is going to keep pushing forward salvation like he is, story after story. So anyway, I just want us to take a break, put our finger in the air, and remember where we are in the world, because amazing things are happening now. But that doesn't mean anything at all is going wrong from God's point of view.
Yeah, it's always a good reminder. Yeah. Yep. I'm going to bite my tongue on what I'm thinking. I don't know.
I want to hear it.
I just don't, and I don't disagree. What I'm about to say in my mind doesn't change anything you just said. So hopefully it doesn't make people nervous. But I just don't see how we're not ramping up in the world towards the next global conflict. That's where I'm at. All the forces that we started discussing that are popping up everywhere, pushback on globalism, leaders in other countries replanting their flag on this religion or this religion, starting to think more nationalistically. And then, with China and Russia kind of up against the wall and the subtle decline of American power, I just think there's a good chance we're looking at like a big hot war sometime in my lifetime, as opposed to a Cold War.
Oh, yeah. Well, there are hot wars in the world.
Yeah,
look at Ukraine. Look at Gaza.
I'm talking about that like pulls everybody in, like, and it could be one of the ones that are currently going that ends up pulling more countries in. It could be Ukraine. It could be Israel, Iran. It could be Pakistan, India.
Well, I'm glad I'm an American.
Oh yeah, me too.
We are still the strongest nation in the world militarily and technologically. I
don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if in my lifetime, assuming God lets me live somewhere close to average for these days, I see some form of WW3.
Yeah, you're Mr. Happy, but I'm not going to argue with that. I would say
it's about time. If you look at the cycles.
Well, look at Pakistan and India today, as we record this. They're on the verge of fighting each other, and so by the time this comes out, someone could have gotten nuked. You may have been and if that happens, the whole world's jumping in. One way or another, the world's going to have to react to that.
And it's counterfactuals, right? You can't. It's just all hypothesizing. But if Biden or Kamala had miraculously won again, I wouldn't have been surprised if China said, "Sweet, I'm going to call their bluff and invade Taiwan."
Well,
right?
they plan on doing it anyway.
Right, but I think Trump
slowed them down.
I think Trump slows down the decision-making there a little bit.
So who's in charge? God is still in charge. He is the one who sets the nation's boundaries and their times. Did you know that's in the Bible? No. I could probably find it for you.
If it was on like a trivia multiple choice question, I might have picked that one. Sounds Bible-y.
Sounds Bible-y.
The men's retreat, we had multiple choice, pick which sentence is from the Bible. They all sound Bible-y, and then figure out which one's the actual.
Is Bible-y a word?
I had just made it up, sure.
Okay.
Did it communicate the thought of a adjective?
Wait a minute. Wait, I got to find. Keep talking, because now I got to find this.
Is it in the Bible, Mike?
It is. I just got to find it.
It's in there somewhere.
Here it is. So Paul says, God made the world. This is Acts 17, verse 24. God made the world and all things in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, and does not dwell in temples made with hands, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all people life and breath and all things. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, having determined their appointed times and boundaries of their habitation, that they would seek God, if perhaps they might grope for him and find him. God has determined already the times and boundaries of every nation, and his purpose is to get humans to find him. So even if World War II happened and rewrote the boundaries of the world, and set up Israel, set up North and South Korea, set up Pakistan. What we think is normal wasn't here when my dad was born in 1940. Of course, you had the Soviet Union, and now it's fallen.
Well, and frankly, World War I, I mean, really, the end of World War I installed this modern idea of what we've been talking about the whole time. This idea of the nation state is a relatively new thing in human history. And
for some people.
We had nations before, but
we were here.
Not quite. We didn't view them in quite the same way we view them now.
Yeah,
right?
Bismarck and pulled Germany together. And
before World War I, it was still a lot of empires.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago. Still a lot
Napoleon.
of empires.
When did Napoleon die?
18.
He was the last shot at an emperor.
Yeah.
In Europe, and that was in the 1800s. So,
the Ottoman Empire was still in existence before World War II, I think.
Yes, and yeah. In any case, you're pushing my history there. I don't know the dates well, but yeah. So the Moors or the Muslims were still around. But what's God doing in the midst of it is the question, and he does different things in different times, but always to reach people for Christ. I'm excited about what's going to happen in China because I just think those commies can only oppress 100 million Christians for so long before God breaks the back of that nation. And then what kind of missionary force is unleashed on the world? When South Korea came about, they had a huge revival. 1/3 of the people became Christians, like that. Whereas North Korea, the opposite happened. They got shut down into darkness of communism. You're talking about Viktor Orban, and you're looking at Eastern Europe. That was all under the Soviets most of my life, or the first half of my life. Second half, the gospel's going forward. Jesus has a plan. So we do not need to worry. If God wants us to have Greenland and a 51st state in Canada, we'll have them. But if he doesn't, we won't. And it doesn't really matter. We're about bigger things than MAGA. We're about bigger things than the fate of nations. This is why you got to run the balance of being prepared for things, for anything, but not thinking that it matters. There's a balance. It's good to have some water and some food stored up and some weapons and whatever. But it doesn't matter that much. So if the worst comes, don't turn into a savage where you think I got to kill people and make sure that I take my stand. Maybe you don't have to. You're in the big picture. You're with the king who wins when he shows up. So we're fighting a different fight. And like I said, these are exciting times to be alive. They could be also very painful times to be alive. The foundations of America are very much being rocked. Make no mistake. You might think, well, no, because Trump won and he's bringing... No, listen, the ideological fights, we're fragile. Right now, the judicial branch fighting against the executive branch, and the legislative branch is sitting there with their fingers up their ears, their noses, let's say noses, and doing nothing. And the whole thing could just go to crap. And that's not the end of the world. The end of the world is the end of the world. And when that happens, that's when we win. That's when we plant our flag and sing our national anthem. So big things are happening. Don't be afraid. And that leads me to a picture I want to show you. Could you show that picture, Sunshine?
I thought it was good. And that leads me to Colossians 3.
No, that will not lead me to that. Husbands and wives. No, I have a picture for you. I have a friend in Oregon, which was once a free state, was now a communist state. It's It is as bad as it gets. Did you see? There's this video. This guy online who moved to Oregon from Pittsburgh. Have you seen this guy?
No, I don't watch anything. I'm
You don't
too
have
busy to even keep up with anything anymore.
I know that's my job. My job is to stay culturally in tune.
Yes. And I'm
Not
happy
yours.
to try to free you up to do that
Let me
as
see if I
much
can
as
find
possible.
this guy, and I'll send them to you. Let me show you how
Wow,
bad.
look at this. The end times. It's in a very specific diagram.
Oh yeah, isn't that nice? What is this, dude?
It's specific, that's for sure. 60, does that say 69 weeks?
69 week of years, which is correct, by the way. That part is. I'm not going to explain it all, but I got a question, and that was included in the question, and I wanted to deal with it. Where the heck is this story I was looking for? So I got a question from Shannon. She said this: "Good morning. I have a God question. I had coffee with my ex-boss, and he was talking about rewards and judgment." And then this was the end time picture from Calvary Chapel, Lynchburg. This is the classic. That picture is classic dispensationalism. Okay, what you have in that picture is it looks like this if you can't see it up close. It has 69 weeks of years. That starts with in Daniel and goes to the cross. And then you have the last week of years starts with the word rapture. So even though 69 on the left only takes up what? A couple inches from the word rapture all the way to the word millennial reign begins, or second coming, that's supposed to be the last year. Daniel has 70 weeks of years. I'm not going to explain all that. But if you look at the orange, it says church age. That's where we live now, in that orange time.
Okay.
Into this scheme, the church is removed to set off the last 7 years. And then that last 7 years, you'll see, it says Daniel's 70th week in blue. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And then it says 3.5 years, and then it says 3.5 years in red. What that person is saying is the first 3.5 years of that week won't be so bad. But the second 3.5 is when all the bad stuff of the book of Revelation happens. That'd be the Great Tribulation. Then the Lord returns, second coming, and you have the millennial reign of Christ. That's 1,000 years. Then you have Satan is released, and the great white throne judgment, new heaven, new earth, new Jerusalem. Now, I'm not going to argue this. I will say I differ from this. If you took that red rapture and put it right at the green second coming and put them together, that would be the big difference between me and this. I would say those two happen at the same time. The amillennialists would do the same, except they'd put the red rapture and the green second coming at the same place, but they'd get rid of the purple millennial reign. It wouldn't be there. You go right into eternity. And if you were to go with the post-trib rapture, they would just skip. They would say the second coming happens after the millennial reign. If you did follow that, fine. If you didn't, fine. But she included this with her question. And so that's what that is. That's dispensationalism. You do not have... There are differences of opinion over whether that is what the future holds. I do not think there will be a rapture of the church before the tribulation. But then she goes in her question, says, he quoted 1 Corinthians 3:14. So what is 1 Corinthians 3:14, Will?
I have it open. It is, if any man's work, which he has built on it, remains, he will receive a reward. If any man's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, but he himself will be saved, yet so as through fire. I assume she wanted 15 also. Well,
she just has 14, but that's okay. We'll come back to it. And then this is her question. He said that during the judgment, depending on how believers live their lives at judgment, some get more rewards than other believers, which translates into more rewards in heaven. Is that accurate? He also had a very definite timeline for the end times. 3.5 years of peace, 3.5 years of despair. He also said there'd be an evil temple in Israel. He showed me a timeline. It's attached. Is that accurate? Well, let's deal with that timeline since it's still up there. the idea that there's 3.5 years of peace and 3.5 years of despair, the answer is we don't know. That's the answer. He does have a definite timeline, and I don't mind that. But I would say when it comes to future prophecy, we all need a little bit of humility. Where he's getting that is from Daniel, where it says, if you just listen, you don't have to just take my word for this. You can look it up later. It says that there will be an evil leader who we think is the Antichrist, but he's called the little horn. And the little horn will make a deal with the saints or the Jews, probably the Jews, for 1 week. And in the middle of the week, he'll break the deal. That's the middle of the week. Now you think, well, a week's only 3.5 days. I know. But let's say a week, each day was a year. And that's what they're saying. You have a 7-year week. And in the middle of that week, this little horn, the Antichrist, is going to break a deal he made with Israel. That's where he gets that. So it's what he's saying isn't crazy. There's a logic to it. The deal, this person would say, requires the rebuilding of the temple that the Jews used to use that was destroyed 2,000 years ago by the Romans. Why do you think they think the temple has to be rebuilt? What do you do in a temple that you can't do elsewhere if you're a Jew? Sacrifice. And this is where the abomination of desolation, you can look it up on your own, comes in. What this person believes, who has that chart, is halfway through the week, that 7-year period, the Antichrist will kill a pig or something like that instead of a lamb in the temple and declare himself to be God. Something like that. And so what the vision is this: the last 7 years of history, a great leader rises up and says, I'm going to bring peace to the earth. And he cuts a deal with Israel, and he rebuilds the temple, which would be a miracle because they've got all the Muslim mosque up there, and they also have a Muslim Dome of the Rock up there. He'd have to tear those down, put back up the temple, and the Jews would say, yay, this is our Messiah. He has brought back the temple. But then he reveals himself to be God and desecrates the temple. And then he goes around killing anyone who doesn't agree with him. That's the scheme he's talking about. Is it going to happen like that? It's we don't know. That's really the truth. We don't know. We do know there will be a time worse than any time. I do not believe that. I believe this guy doesn't believe that the church will be here. So he says the church and Israel are two different things. I think believers will be here till the end. I don't know if there's a temple that's going to be rebuilt or not. Could be. Doesn't have to be. Depends on what symbol. So when you say, is that accurate? I'm going to say no. The reason it's not accurate is because none of us know exactly how these future prophecies are going to go. Could it be? He thinks it could be. And so I'll leave it at that. Then going backwards to 13:14. Let's deal with that question.
14:15.
14:15. 1 Corinthians 13. You really have to back it up a little bit.
Yes. We were just in this with Dave Burton a few weeks ago. We were in the paragraph above when you were saying, what then is Apollos? What then is Paul?
Right.
You just did this week too. I planted, Apollos watered.
And then he's talking about preachers. And in verse 8, he says, he who plants and he who waters are one, but each receives his own reward. And he's talking about preachers. And in verse 9, he says, we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building. So he's saying preachers are working with God to plant his field or build his building, and that's the church.
Yes.
So in verse 10, he's talking about himself. So I think you have to read verse 10.
According to the grace of God, which was given to me, like a wise master builder, I laid a foundation, and another is building on it. But each man must be careful how he builds on it.
So what's he talking about? Describe that in plain language.
So he's starting with a blank slate, Paul's saying. And it's a gift from God that he's laying the first stones. So you've excavated your spot for your new house. You tamp the dirt down, and he is getting ready to put the first blocks of the basement upon which you're going to build the house.
Right.
And he says, but you got to be careful when you build on top of the blocks I've already laid.
So that's the metaphor. What's he actually doing?
Teaching.
He's building a church.
Yeah, building a church by teaching people.
He planted the Corinthian church,
yes.
And he's teaching, and that's how he builds. So he's saying, I built this church. Now someone else is there teaching because he's somewhere else writing a letter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying that person don't think he needs to be me. He doesn't have to be me. We're working on the same church. There was a guy who planted this church, or actually several families, but the first preacher was named Burt Jones. He left, and now I am more. His point is, both me and Burt are working on the same church. And that's what Paul is saying. I worked on it, now someone else. And then he says, but each man must be careful. What is he talking about there? How he builds.
I'm jumping ahead in my mind, but you want to use the same type of stones. Like
yeah.
I'm laying a certain type of stones here, and you don't want to put other types of stones on top of this.
You're building God's church. You don't want to mess it up.
Yeah.
In fact, in verse 11, he says, no one can lay a foundation other than the one which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. So he's using this metaphor to say,
this is a church of Christ.
Yeah, do not put false gods or false teaching here. If it doesn't take away from the fact that this is God's church that I built, but you might have a guy who's not doing a good job. He's not adding. And then he says, now if any man builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, or straw, each man's work will become evident. Okay, this is still metaphor for preaching and building the church. Now in the metaphor, gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, and straw, what's the difference between those 6 materials?
Various levels of quality of work.
And price.
3 little pigs.
3 little pigs.
Hay, sticks, and bricks.
That's right. But if you have gold, silver, and precious stone, wood, hay, and straw, in the metaphor, he's saying you're supposed to be working with gold, silver, and precious stones, not wood, hay, and straw.
Okay, take that.
All right. How now in the 3 pigs, the first one made
straw,
and the second one sticks, and the third
brick.
And what was it that tested the house?
The big bad wolf.
He would huff and puff and blow the house down.
And then the quality of the building would be demonstrated.
Right, by the building materials.
Yes.
And the breath of that wolf's mouth could blow away the straw and the
sticks,
but not the
bricks.
That is what he's going here, but instead of a big bad wolf, what's he using?
Fire,
which is still work of the big bad wolf. It's hard to set a brick on fire, but you can burn sticks.
Which makes me immediately go to judgment.
Yes, fire and judgment seem to go together. So it says, now if any man builds with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, and straw, each man's work will become evident, for the day will show it, because it is to be revealed with fire, and the fire itself will test the quality of each man's work. Is this judgment? Maybe, maybe not. This is a metaphor of preachers building a church. And I'm not saying there isn't a judgment with a reward.
But it is definitely a test of the work of the preacher.
That's right. And what it's testing is, did he build any parts of this church that last? Are the stones humans? Is that what he means?
Are they saved?
People? I don't even know. But if you just look at the picture, he's saying, when you look at preachers, some of them are building out of good quality that's eternal, and some of them are building out of quality that's really worthless. And then he says this, if any man's work, which he has built on it, he's still talking about the church, not individuals. If any man's work, which he's built on it, remains, he will receive a reward. So the thrust is, what do the preachers get for doing the work of building the church? And I'm talking about preachers. To everyone listening, Shannon, I hope you're hearing me. In context, this is about preachers. It does not mean there isn't a reward in other places, but this particular one is talking about preachers who preach. And he is saying they will receive a reward. It could be, though, he's not emphasizing reward. He's emphasizing the fact that everyone gets rewarded by Christ for doing good works, including preachers, except bad ones. Because then he says, if any man is burned up, he will suffer loss, but he himself will be saved, yet so as through fire.
So if the builder, we're sticking with the metaphor, if the builder puts bad material on the house that gets burned up when it's tested by fire, that builder is going to suffer loss. But he himself will be saved, but as through fire.
Yes.
It's not going to feel good.
It's not going to hurt him. His loss will be his works. He wasted his time. And then it says this, do you not know that you are a temple of God and the Holy Spirit dwells in you? The difficulty of this is who's he talking about when he says this? We often use this to talk about our bodies, because there is a place where he says the body is the temple of the Spirit. Is that what he's saying here? I would say no. The word "you" is plural there. But do you not know that you are a temple of God and the Spirit of God dwells in you? If any man destroys the temple of God, God will destroy him, for the temple of God is holy, and that is what you, plural, are. And so he's saying, you are the temple of God, you people who are the church. You are holy. If anyone fights against you, the church, and tries to tear you down, then God is his enemy. And then he says, let no man deceive himself. If any man among you thinks that he's wise in this age, he must become a fool, so that he might become wise. I think his point on verse 18, his application is, don't bring the wisdom of the world into the church thinking you're going to make things better. That's wood, hay, or straw. Just preach the word. For the wisdom of the world is foolishness before God. It is written, he is the one who catches the wise in his craftiness. The Lord knows the reasonings of the wise, that they are useless. And so on. So this is not about rewards in general or the judgment day. It's about rewards for people who preach to build the church or seek to build the church. Which doesn't answer her question, does it?
Well, and seemingly the application there is what you already said, but just bringing it back in is that what are the good building materials? It's the wisdom of God, not the wisdom of the world. Like, don't, as you're building the church, the wisdom of the world doesn't make the building better.
Yes, exactly. So that's for the pastor. And the pastor, or the preacher, let's call it that. I want you to talk a little longer because I'm searching for something here.
That's all right. Sorry.
That's okay. You don't have to. The idea, though, that each person is judged by his works as a Christian is in the Bible. I just wouldn't necessarily sit as heavily on that verse to explain much of it.
Yeah, this wouldn't be your verse of choice to talk about that topic.
Well, it's actually the topic is it's broad, and this is there, but let's get the principle out of the way. A text out of context is a pretext. So if you take one text out of its context, it becomes a pretext is an excuse to go a different direction. The judgment seat of Christ is a teaching of the Bible that I'm not going to try to take away from. I'm looking at which verses to go into next to show you that. 1 Corinthians 4:5, which is the very next chapter might be a good place for us to look. So there is a reward for preachers. The question is there a reward for everybody? And I'd say the answer is yes. I just don't. Therefore, do not go passing judgment before the time, but wait until the Lord comes, who will bring both to light things hidden in the darkness and disclose the motives of men's hearts. And each man will pray. Man's praise will come to him from God. So there is
Where's the time where we're going to get to see?
Yes. There is a text I'm trying to think of. So here's the scheme. Here's the scheme that Christians have taught, and then and instead of looking for proof text myself, the scheme that we're taught in the Scripture is we escape the judgment of God for our sins. Our name is written in the book of life, and anyone whose name is written in the book of life escapes punishment. But everyone else judged by their deeds. But we are measured for what we do. And that one verse that your friend showed you is a good proof text for that. It's just narrow. That doesn't mean everyone doesn't get rewards, but that doesn't happen to be talking strictly about that. The parables of Jesus show him giving
varied rewards to different servants.
Yes,
based on their output.
Yes, he says you've been faithful over a little, I'm going to give you much. You've been faithful over a few minas, I'm going to put you over a few cities. So there is a judgment. Let me look that up. But let me ask you a question before I do, because I think this gets to perhaps the heart of why Shannon is asking this. Is that supposed to motivate us? Are rewards supposed to motivate us? Are you motivated? If so, how? By the idea of getting rewarded for what you're doing.
Wow. It personally, just autobiographically, doesn't motivate me very much. Although I'd say we'd all have to recognize that like something in human nature seems to be motivated by reward. It's why we use rewards for stuff. It generally does, on the grand scheme of things, motivate people a little bit. Right? I mean, it's like, that's why they're used. That's why rewards are commonly used to motivate people, because it seems to be in us to be,
because it works.
Because it works. So, but I don't often think about rewards in heaven as you know, the motivating factor in my deeds for Christ.
No,
just personally.
No, he says store up treasures in heaven where no one can steal them. There is a reward in heaven for serving the Lord and doing good, and each man will be rewarded according to his deeds. Jesus says that over and over, so it's clear that there. So I'm going to say your friend is telling you the truth. There are rewards in heaven,
and likely varied.
I don't know what they're going to be like. I don't think you can find a lot of verses saying that you should be motivated by. I think the hard part with the rewards is it's hard to think of them without thinking like a fallen human.
Yeah. Gimme.
Yeah, gimme. I'm going to be greedy. Gimme stuff. And he wants you to love the giver, not the gift on earth. He wants you to love Christ, you know. And so I'm sure he wants the same when you get to heaven. He doesn't want you to love Jesus. I'll spend time with you later. Right now, I'm really loving this gold you gave me. I don't think
this is a really sweet dirt bike I'm going to ride around Mars.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to coexist well with the ideas of what's going to happen when you're in heaven, and it better not be more of earth. And I think that is the problem with heaven. You can't help but think of it as just more of earth.
Yeah, well, that's because we're just so limited in our mindset. Like, it's where reading a little fiction can. I'm not a very imaginative person. We've been talking a lot about C.S. Lewis. I just finished his space trilogy, Out of the Silent Planet, Paralandra, That Hideous Strength.
That Hideous Strength's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I really like Paralandra. I liked all three of them. And he's just more imaginative than me. And so...
that's his job.
Yeah, and he's got...
Not your job.
He does kind of imagine pleasures or goods that are beyond what we normally think. Like we think of when we think of rewards in heaven, we think of like earthly stuff. We're just gonna get a lot of like gold. Like who's gonna care about gold
More of the same.
in heaven? And and he's talking about in the one book, like he's in this other planet and he eats this fruit and it's like it's beyond description. It's kind of ironic. He's like describing it and it sounds so awesome, but it's beyond description is his description of it. That using any earthly comparison or earthly terms would do it injustice, right? In just the biting of one fruit. It's like, and then there's this one where he's enjoying seeing how the universe works, almost like this cosmic, it's all woven together idea. And he's finally experiencing it for the first time. And then he realizes when he snaps out of it, he was standing there for an entire year.
Wow.
And it's like, so it's just, I don't conceive of heaven in these sorts of more imaginative, don't get stuck in your earthly
Lewis is one of
creativity.
The most quoted Lewis quotes is it says that he is in this context. In fact, this Lewis quote is often given without the context. We're unimaginative creatures. We misunderstand like people who are offered a vacation, or we enjoy playing in mud puddles because we don't understand what's the offer of a holiday at the sea. And so we're like children, like, no, I'm happy. Well, I'm going to take you to the ocean. Well, I'm happy here. Well, I've never seen
I have
the
no
ocean.
concept of the ocean.
Yeah,
I'm a 2-year-old.
And he uses that to say that's what heaven, the difficulty of describing heaven in the Bible, that's his point. His point wasn't to insult us, which most people use that as, look how little imagination we have. No, his point was, describing heaven requires earthly words.
Yes.
Like rewards, if I could come back to that. And I don't think we can think of them in earthly sense and have it make any sense at all. Rewards that I'm competing for, it's hard for me as a human not to naturally think of winning against you. Not against you, but against anybody.
Yeah, of course, not me, but
not you.
But Sunshine for sure. We want
to pound her into
beat
the
Sunshine.
dirt. So but when you drive a brand new car and the very male example, and you're just enjoying this car, whether it's a rental or not, and you're passing by all these beaters, you feel competitive. Any man says doesn't feel competitive is lying to you. When you get a raise and you know you're making more than the people around you, though that's not why you wanted the raise, perhaps, maybe it is, it hits you. I make more than the people around me. The idea of winning more games, more championships, more championship rings on your hand, that's the problem with rewards. They fall into earthly categories.
Right.
And
Lewis in both Narnia and the Space Trilogy series develops this idea of in his heaven type place, experiencing psychologically or emotionally such a comfort, relief, love, like every good descriptor you could think of for emotional state, that anything we would describe as physical rewards here, the characters don't even care that they exist anymore. It's like they're in the nirvana bliss state of like, all that stuff is foolish. Like I'm experiencing everything that those things provide me just in my psyche. It's like weird. It's weird. Like the rewards in heaven might just be the feeling, the full weight of the love and presence of Christ in whatever your psyche is like.
Well, I think you're hitting this is
like wanting gold or a truck or like who cares at that moment? You just
the weight of glory is the name of the essay. I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
that quote comes from. And
the puddle and the ocean
puddle
quote.
one, yeah, and in that his point is, it is from that. By the way, I just looked it up to make sure. His overall point is what God is going to share with you isn't going to make sense to you if I describe it to you on earth, because it's you getting the glory of the victor, and it's really yours, even though it doesn't correspond to what you did. It'd be like the Steelers win the game, but you are the Super Bowl champ. You're like, this isn't going to make any sense to me at all.
And all the emotions that you see them have on the field,
You get them all.
You get those emotions.
And it's because the God of heaven is going to single you out. Well, I don't know if single out is the right way to say it. This is what I mean. It's hard not. He's going to put his attention on you. That's better. In such a way that you'll be completely, and knowing you, Shannon, you won't like this part, but you will like it in heaven, and everyone else, you're going to be completely seen, but you're not going to be naked, if as it were. You're going to be glorious, and he is going to bestow such glory on you, and you're going to be utterly seen by the God who is. And that's the weight of glory. It's like he's glorifying you. He's praising you, which as odd as it sounds, that's what we're getting at here. So Lewis described heaven like this once. Imagine someone and a child. I think it was a woman. I can't remember. It doesn't matter now. And the child is born into captivity with mom in a cell that has no sunlight. Very diffused light, very little bit. So he lives in a gray, colorless reality. And the mom, with hopes of freedom one day, takes the time to describe to the child the world outside. And you can imagine her taking charcoal or something and sketching on the wall the picture of a tree and of the sun and the water and the grass, and describing to him things that make no sense to him, called colors, green and blue and yellow and red and all these things. And the child can believe the mom, can have faith. I believe you. But his concept is always going to be the pictures on the wall.
Black and white charcoal on concrete with gray light.
Until he's set free. And then what's his experience?
I understand.
Yes, and it's exactly what my mom said, but it's got nothing to do
with what I imagined.
With what she said. What she drew on the wall was right, but it's nothing. It's nothing compared to this. And the Bible uses terms like shadow. All these things are a shadow of things to come, which is why he also coined the term Shadowlands. C.S. Lewis thought about heaven all the time, I think.
Yeah.
The Shadowlands, that these are the Shadowlands. We're living in some sort of shadowy universe where a drink may taste good, but you don't even know what taste is.
Right.
With your little five senses and your little bitter, sweet, salty, whatever it is, tongue, you don't even know what taste is. You're in the charcoal land. You're in the shadow land. The reality is when you get there. Is there a corresponding reward to every good deed done in the name of Christ? I'm going to say yes. The scripture seems to indicate it. I'll agree with your friend. Regardless of what text he used, I think that is a good text because it shows the principle. But if the deeper question is that supposed to motivate me?
If it's required to motivate you, it would worry.
Yeah, let's just say this. There's the sense that you're not living in vain.
That's a good way to put it.
Should hit you, and that I'm not living in vain, and then that the cost of doing good here is never wasted time.
Well, right, because then to jump in there, and that verse comes out of the Bible too, that your work is not in vain in the Lord, because that's like nihilistic. That's like people who don't believe in God or any sort of life after, then everything becomes meaningless. This is where nihilism comes from. So why does any of it matter? We'll just do whatever I want, or even just kill myself. Like if your work was in vain and everything was, you just kind of would, let's just die. It's all meaningless. Let's just get to the end. Let's get to the finish where I can be the Super Bowl champ. Why not be the guy
who sows through fire? Go ahead and burn my works up. Why should I waste my time? Which is nihilistic and negative and not good. I think sometimes you have to do your duty. Duty is a good word, D-U-T-Y, because it means doing what's right because it's right, and that's it. And You can imagine a woman whose husband becomes an invalid and she loses 30 years of the joy she would have had with him if it weren't for the accident. But she cares for him during those 30 years, and she loses the children she would have bore and the grandchildren she would have bore. But she does her duty and loves her husband till he dies. Has she lost something? Well, in an earthly sense, you could say yes, but what the scripture would say is no. There is no loss, because the reward for doing that good deed will far outweigh the loss. This is also where the answer to the question some people say is, what do you mean we're not going to be married in heaven? Like Sunshine just got married. And how romantic is it to know that if you die today in a grisly wreck, you'll never be married to him again. It's over forever and ever and ever. How romantic is that?
Not.
It's not. And people say, well, how can this be?
At the risk of being blasphemous, it's sucky.
Yes, it's sucky. But actually, it won't bother you at all. It will not, but there will be no loss. And people say, well, does that mean I'm going to forget him? No. In fact, the opposite seems to be true. You'll probably know him better than you've ever known him. You'll love him more than you've ever loved him when you both are in heaven. You'll appreciate him more. You'll enjoy him more. But you won't lose a thing. And there'll be zero loss. Again, we come back to this. Like children playing in the gutter with mud pies because they don't understand what's meant by an offer of a holiday at the sea. We don't understand heaven. So when we talk about rewards, Shannon, keep doing right because it is right, and God will bless you your whole life. When the end times come, what you need to know, you'll know. Don't sit around waiting for a rapture to zip you out of trouble, and don't sit around worrying about antichrists. Just live a faithful life today, every day, while it is called today. And then when it's time to go home, you'll go home. And I wouldn't worry about it. But I thank your friend. He is right there in the heart of evangelical Christendom, and especially as far as his future prophecy goes of dispensationalism. And there's nothing wrong with that. Dispensationalists are not heretics. They just have a scheme of the future.
That's wrong. No, what?
that's more right than the amillennialists, but less right than me, the historic premillennialists. And then and that's really, we're joking, but that is the humility that has to go with future prophecy. It's always clear after it happens. I got a feeling when Jesus returns, the historic pre-mills, the dispensationalists, the amills, and the post-mills will all go, oh,
yeah,
that's what you meant.
Right.
Now we get it. But looking towards the future, it's dicey stuff. So,
hey, I think that's perfect for today.
Okay. I have no idea how we're doing on time because
I do.
Oh, you do, because it's been cut off. It's gone. Our TV went off. So, but that's okay.
Well, hopefully that discussion was helpful. I've always previously not liked thinking of heaven, so if you're in that boat, C.S. Lewis has helped me.
C.S. Lewis will help you. Further up and further in.
Further up, further in. Narnia.
So, hey, we're done.
For now.
For now.
Lord willing.
Later.
Bye.